In the early hours of a crisp autumn morning in the quiet suburb of Eastwood, an event unfolded that would soon reverberate throughout the city. Marjorie Ellison, a woman known for her stern demeanor and narrow views, stood at the edge of her manicured lawn. From her window, she watched with an intensity born of prejudice as a large, stately house, recently purchased by a prominent black family, gleamed in the sunlight. Marjorie had always prided herself on her immaculate neighborhood, and the presence of this home, with its bold colors and modern design, did not fit into her vision of perfection. That morning, while most of her neighbors were still asleep, Marjorie peered over her floral curtains and noticed something even more troubling. The family that now resided in the home, known as the Jeffersons, were conducting repairs on the property. The sound of heavy machinery and the sight of workers unloading equipment sparked a fire of indignation in her heart. Convinced that the mere existence of a black-owned home would bring chaos and devalue her community, Marjorie reached for her telephone. Without a moment of hesitation, she dialed the local demolition crew. In her mind, the solution was simple. If the home did not belong, it should be removed by force. Her voice, trembling with a mix of anger and self-righteous determination, rang out into the receiver as she reported what she believed to be a threat to the neighborhood. "I must report something suspicious," she declared. "There's a black-owned home in our community that I am certain is causing trouble. I demand that someone come immediately to demolish it." In that moment, Marjorie did not suspect that her call would set in motion a series of events that would shock not only her, but the entire city. Before we go any further, subscribe to the channel and comment below where you are watching from. For our returning subscribers, thank you so much for your unwavering support. It truly means a lot to our community. The city of Eastwood was a place where tradition and progress sometimes collided. Its tree-lined streets and well-kept gardens stood as symbols of a community that valued order and stability. Yet, beneath the serene exterior, there were deep currents of tension and change. The Jefferson family had moved into one of the older, but beautifully restored, homes on Maple Street. Mr. Elijah Jefferson, a respected architect and civil rights advocate, and his wife, Dr. Simone Jefferson, a dedicated community physician, had invested not only money but also heart and soul into preserving the historic integrity of the neighborhood. Their home, with its vibrant murals and carefully landscaped garden, had become a beacon of hope and a testament to their unwavering commitment to excellence and equality. In contrast, Marjorie Ellison, a lifelong resident of Eastwood, had long believed that her neighborhood should adhere to a strict code of conformity. For her, any deviation from the norm was an affront to the established order. Marjorie had built her reputation as a guardian of tradition, often speaking out against any change that she felt might disrupt the community's fabric. Her opinions, although rooted in ignorance and prejudice, had earned her both support and notoriety among some residents. However, her views were increasingly coming under scrutiny as the city grew more diverse and progressive. The Jeffersons, in their own right, were a family of quiet dignity and strength. They had not come to Eastwood merely to live. They had come to contribute. Elijah had planned several community outreach projects to revitalize the neighborhood park, while Simone had started free health clinics for underprivileged residents. Their presence in the neighborhood was meant to be a positive influence, a shining example of what determination and unity could achieve. Yet, not everyone was prepared to welcome them with open arms. On the day of the demolition call, the stage was set for a confrontation between old prejudices and the promise of a more inclusive future. The Jefferson home, standing as a symbol of hope and progress, had become the target of a hate-fueled plot. Marjorie, driven by unfounded fears and stereotypes, believed that the home was a threat that had to be eliminated. Unbeknownst to her, the events that would soon unfold were destined to reveal not only the error of her ways, but also the strength and resilience of a community united by a shared vision of justice. Within hours of Marjorie's fateful phone call, the local demolition crew received the directive. At first, they were puzzled by the order to demolish a residence that appeared structurally sound and had clear documentation of ownership. However, in a bid to please a concerned citizen, They made their way to the Jefferson property, their trucks rumbling down Maple Street under a gray sky. Elijah Jefferson had spent the previous evening finalizing plans for a community mural project on the side of his home. As he stepped outside to check on some preparations, he noticed the arrival of heavy machinery. A sense of foreboding crept into his heart, for he had heard rumors of tension in the neighborhood. Soon, a group of uniformed workers in demolition gear began surveying the property. Their presence was alarming, and within minutes, word spread through the neighborhood that something serious was afoot. At the same time, Marjorie watched from her window with a self-satisfied smile, convinced that she had taken the first step in protecting her community. However, as the demolition crew began to set up, a murmur of discontent started to rise among other residents. Neighbors, who had always prided themselves on the reputation of Eastwood as a welcoming place, were shocked that such an extreme measure was being considered against a family that had contributed so much to the community. Inside the Jefferson home, tension was mounting. Simone, ever the calm voice in the family, reassured Elijah that everything would be resolved peacefully. "We have built this home with love and care," she said softly, "and we will not allow ignorance to tear us apart." Elijah, though troubled, resolved to confront the situation head-on. He contacted his lawyer and local community leaders to ensure that the property was legally protected. Meanwhile, outside on the street, the demolition crew began preparing their equipment when a concerned citizen, Mr. Carter, stepped forward. Mr. Carter was known in Eastwood for his impartiality and his dedication to fairness. He had been watching the unfolding scene with growing alarm. "This is not right," he said loudly, addressing the gathered crowd. "I have known the Jeffersons for many years. They have done nothing but enrich our community. This is an act of hatred and ignorance." Mr. Carter's words resonated with many who had gathered to watch the scene. Soon, a small but determined group of neighbors formed a human chain in front of the demolition trucks, demanding that the work be halted immediately. Social media posts and local news alerts began to circulate, drawing the attention of city officials. What started as a hate-driven call for demolition was rapidly turning into a public outcry against an injustice. As the dispute escalated, Marjorie continued to stand firm in her beliefs, oblivious to the shift in public sentiment. In her mind, she was defending tradition and order. Yet behind her, the voices of reason grew louder. The conflict was no longer about a simple property dispute. It had become a battle over the soul of the neighborhood. The residents of Eastwood were beginning to see that this was a pivotal moment, one that would determine whether their community would succumb to outdated prejudices or embrace a future built on equality and understanding. As the confrontation outside the Jefferson home intensified, the tension reached a fever pitch. The demolition crew, now caught in the crossfire of community anger and bureaucratic indecision, hesitated. City officials arrived on the scene to assess the situation, and soon, a formal investigation was launched to determine the legality of the demolition order. Meanwhile, a heated town hall meeting was scheduled, and the residents of Eastwood gathered in large numbers at the local community center to voice their concerns. Elijah and Simone Jefferson, determined to protect not only their home, but also the values they stood for, addressed the crowd. "Our home has been a labor of love," Elijah declared, his voice resonant with passion. "It is a symbol of our resilience and our hope for a better tomorrow. We do not stand for hatred. We stand for unity and progress." His words were met with resounding applause from an audience that had grown tired of the divisive rhetoric of the past. At the same time, Marjorie Ellison, who had been steadfast in her earlier actions, found herself increasingly isolated. Neighbors who once shared her views began to question her motives. "Why would we allow hatred to dictate our actions?" one resident asked, her voice trembling with emotion. "We must look to the future, not be trapped by the past." Such sentiments echoed throughout the gathering, and the public support for the Jefferson family grew stronger by the minute. In a dramatic twist that no one had anticipated, evidence began to surface that suggested the demolition order was not only baseless, but also a tool manipulated by those with hidden agendas. Documents obtained by a local journalist revealed that a prominent local developer had secretly backed the call for demolition, hoping to purchase the property at a significantly reduced price. This revelation, when broadcast on the local news, sent shockwaves through the community. The racist motives of the initial call were exposed as part of a larger, more insidious plot to exploit racial tensions for financial gain. As the city grappled with the unfolding scandal, tensions on Maple Street escalated further. Protesters, armed with signs demanding justice and equality, took to the streets. Rallies were organized, and social media buzzed with hashtags such as hashtag Save the Jefferson Home and hashtag No to Hate. The city council convened an emergency meeting to decide on the fate of the property, and legal experts were brought in to review the case. The demolition crew, caught between their orders and the growing public outcry, began to doubt the legitimacy of their mission. Their supervisors received repeated calls from higher authorities instructing them to stand down until a thorough investigation could be completed. With the support of the community and the intervention of city officials, the demolition equipment was gradually dismantled and removed from the site. Yet, even as the immediate threat to the Jefferson home receded, the tension in the air remained palpable. Marjorie, who had expected vindication for her actions, now found herself the subject of harsh criticism. Public opinion had shifted dramatically. Her call had ignited a movement that exposed not only her own prejudices, but also the exploitation at the heart of the demolition order. The very act that she believed would cleanse the neighborhood of an unwelcome element had instead unified the community in defense of justice and equality. Throughout the day, passionate debates filled the local news and social media channels. Opinion pieces and editorials condemned the racist motivations behind the call for demolition. Leaders from various community organizations, including civil rights activists and local politicians, spoke out in support of the Jefferson family and denounced the attempt to use hate as a business tool. The city of Eastwood was now at a crossroads, a moment when the old ways could be overturned by the power of truth and solidarity. As dusk settled over the neighborhood, the energy of the protesters did not wane. Candlelight vigils were held, and people from all walks of life gathered to celebrate the preservation of the Jefferson home. In that unity, the city saw a promise for a better future, a future where differences would be celebrated rather than condemned, and where hate would be met with unyielding resistance. The decisive moment arrived on the morning of the scheduled town hall meeting. The Jefferson home, once a target for demolition, was now at the center of a legal and moral battle that had captured the attention of the entire city. In a packed auditorium at the community center, city officials, legal experts, and residents gathered to hear the final decision. At the podium, the city council chairperson announced that, based on the overwhelming evidence of malfeasance and discriminatory intent, the demolition order was to be rescinded immediately. "This is a victory for justice and a testament to our community's strength," the chairperson declared, her voice ringing with authority. "We will preserve this home as a symbol of resilience and progress." In that moment, the Jefferson family emerged onto the stage. Elijah and Simone, standing side by side, expressed their gratitude to the community for standing up against injustice. Their eyes shone with tears of relief and hope. The applause that filled the room was thunderous and affirming, a resounding message that hate would not triumph in Eastwood. For Marjorie Ellison, the turning point was equally dramatic. No longer could she hide behind the facade of righteousness as her actions were laid bare for all to see. The evidence of her call, combined with the exposé of the developer's ulterior motives, had rendered her an outcast. In the glare of public scrutiny, she realized too late that her attempt to enforce her narrow view of order had only served to reveal her own deep-seated prejudices. The climax was further underscored by an unexpected twist. In a move that shocked the city even more, it was revealed that the Jefferson home held historical significance as a former sanctuary for civil rights activists during the turbulent days of segregation. Archival photographs and testimonials were presented, documenting how the home had once served as a safe haven and meeting place for those who had fought for equal rights. The revelation transformed the property from a disputed structure into a cherished monument of the city's progressive history. This dramatic unveiling not only vindicated the Jefferson family, but also turned the tide of public opinion entirely. The city council voted unanimously to designate the home as a protected historical site, ensuring its preservation for future generations. The racist actions of Marjorie and the unscrupulous motives of the developer were condemned in the strongest possible terms, and calls for accountability echoed throughout the city. In the days and weeks following the climactic town hall meeting, Eastwood underwent a period of profound reflection and transformation. The preservation of the Jefferson home became a rallying point for community unity. Neighbors who had once been divided by old prejudices came together to celebrate a shared commitment to justice and equality. The story of how a racist call had inadvertently saved a historical monument resonated deeply with residents, and it sparked broader conversations about the need to confront bias in all its forms. Marjorie Ellison, once convinced that her actions were justified, found herself isolated and publicly shamed. Facing both legal repercussions and social ostracism, she was forced to reckon with the consequences of her hate-driven behavior. In a rare moment of self-reflection, she admitted to herself that her narrow-mindedness had contributed to a greater good by uniting the community against discrimination. However, the damage to her reputation was irreversible. The Jefferson family, buoyed by the overwhelming support from the city, began planning initiatives to honor the legacy of their home. Elijah and Simone organized community events, educational programs, and historical tours that celebrated the struggles and triumphs of civil rights pioneers. Their efforts not only preserved the memory of those who had fought for justice, but also inspired a new generation to carry the torch forward. As for the city of Eastwood, the incident served as a turning point. Local government officials pledged to implement stronger measures against discriminatory practices and to promote diversity and inclusion in every facet of civic life. The story of the Black-owned home, once targeted by hate, had become a symbol of hope and resilience. It was a reminder that, even in the face of prejudice, unity and truth could prevail. The final chapter of this saga was written during a community celebration held in the refurbished garden of the Jefferson home. Under a sky lit by soft, glowing lanterns, residents gathered to express their gratitude and to commit to a future where no one would be judged by the color of their skin or the origin of their home. A local poet took the stage and recited a moving piece. True justice is not found in the demolition of hate, but in the construction of bridges that unite us all. In that moment, the city of Eastwood realized that its strength lay not in conformity, but in diversity. The Jefferson home stood as a monument to that belief, a beacon of light that would guide the community through even the darkest of times. The legacy of prejudice had been transformed into a powerful narrative of redemption, resilience, and hope.